Hello, everyone. This is Marcus from the Deep Dive Discography Podcast coming at you with a concert review. So, I was lucky enough to go down to Pontiac, Michigan at the Crofoot Ballroom to watch this awesome set over here. You can see the poster. We have Dying Fetus and Chelsea Grin headlining with opening support coming from Bodysnatcher, Frozen Soul, and Undeath. I had the opportunity to interview Undeath and Bodysnatcher, so as far as I know, those should be up. But let me tell you, man, this is a really awesome bill. So if this is coming towards your town, you got to check it out. What really stole the show for me, honestly, was Undeath's performance. Like, the thing about Undeath, they're kind of like a 90s style death metal band. They take a lot of influence from, I don't know, like let's say a Bolt Thrower, Cannibal Corpse kind of style, and man, they just play it so well. I think what I like about Undeath compared to a lot of kind of like old school revival kind of bands is there's a huge sense of funness to Undeath. A lot of their riffs are very bouncy, they're very energetic. They really keep the listener entertained, so I just think they're awesome. The stage presence of the vocalist Alex, who I interviewed, man, so good. He seems like so happy to be there. Big, grinny smile on his face the entire time he's bouncing around. Everyone performed like super well. I was really, really impressed with Undeath. I was entertained all the way through. Really happy with that one. Frozen Soul, that was a really, really awesome experience, actually. So Frozen Soul, the best comparison I could give is actually just Bolt Thrower, Benediction style death metal. So kind of like a throwback band as well, but very, very good. You see, the thing I like about Frozen Soul, incredibly catchy, kind of like Undeath, but just a different interpretation of like similar ideas, right? Whereas if Undeath is more akin to, like, let's say a Cannibal Corpse, then Frozen Soul is more akin to Bolt Thrower, right? So, different cuts from a similar cloth, but man, Frozen Soul, again, like Undeath, very energetic, very awesome. The singer at one point, a really cool moment was he actually gave like this really big kind of like crowd banter about toxic masculinity as in regards to the metal scene and how like, we're all in it together and that kind of thing. And it was just really cool to hear a metal front person say those things at a metal show. That's something you don't see too often. And it really run over a lot of the crowd. People seemed really into it. I think Frozen Soul really gave like the next couple of bands like the run for their money, man. Highly recommend it. Frozen Soul is a really new act. They've only been around for a small handful of years, which is really cool that both them and Undeath are blowing up and getting on this sick tour. Next, we have Bodysnatcher I interviewed, and admittedly so, that was actually the band that I was kind of excited to see when I first came across this bill. Not to say I didn't like everyone else, but that was just the band I kind of like really, really dug on their new album called Bleed Abide. And yeah, man, when they play it live, it's just exactly that. It's exactly what you think it is. Incredibly energetic performances. It was just all around like a good show. I couldn't really have too much to say about them, unfortunately, because it is exactly what you think it is. If you've ever listened to any of their studio recordings, it is just that, but performed live. Incredibly, incredibly tight musicianship. I thought the drummer, Chris, does a really good job of making that band feel energetic and bouncy. It's great stuff if you really want to hear some like a super aggressive, almost like exaggerated, brutal throwdown. Kind of hardcore deathcore. It's really cool. So Chelsea Grin's actually a band I only really remember from the MySpace scene era days, but I never actually paid attention to them until recently. And I am not honestly the biggest Chelsea Grin kind of guy, but admittedly so, I thought their set was really fucking cool. Like when I was listening to their studio recordings, I thought, okay, this is fine. It is what it is. But seeing them live really made that stuff like come to life, and I think their music translates really well live. And what I noticed too is the crowd was particularly receptive to Chelsea Grin. I think a lot of people were there to see Chelsea Grin. I know when I was just kind of like talking to some of the people, some of the other photographers, they were saying like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of Chelsea Grin. I've been growing up on their stuff. So I think that is really cool that a lot of people are still really enthusiastic. the vocalist, Tom Barber, he used to play in Lorna Shore at one point, and he's their current vocalist for Chelsea Grin. And like, yeah, man, like he performed super well live. It was really cool to see him perform. And I actually kind of forgot he was their vocalist until he walked up on stage, and I was like, oh, hey, it's Tom Barber. That's really cool. Super clear, crystal clear production. The drumming was tight. The guitar playing was tight. Tom's vocals were tight. The tones were great. Exactly what you think it is. What I really liked about Chelsea Grin's set list is they actually played quite a few songs from all parts of their eras, which is actually really nice because they've been around for, you know, like a decade and a half at this point. So they have a discography to pull from. And yeah, man, they played like a couple songs here and there. They even played Kruka Banger, which some of you guys might remember, like in those kind of YouTube videos where it's like breakdown compilations and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. And you know what? At first I was like, oh, why is Dying Fetus playing a Chelsea Grin? That seems like an odd bill. But seeing them live, I kind of get it. I kind of see a lot of the crossover amongst these bands and like the kind of general brutal and slam influence that every single one of these bands actually has. And maybe Chelsea Grin studio recordings don't always get that across, but live, their slammy breakdown riffs really do translate. It didn't feel super out of place once I was actually there, like seeing everything kind of come together. Really complimentary to Dying Fetus, like oddly enough, right? And, you know, one thing I really like about this bill in general is it's a lot of genre blending, which we all know if you listen to the show, I'm a really big fan of that. Really glad to see you got the old school revival kind of death metal bands playing together with a hardcore beatdown going into a straight up deathcore band going into Dying Fetus, which obviously is, you know, like brutal death metal, techie brutal kind of stuff. What I've always liked about Dying Fetus is that they have a big New York hardcore influence because, you know, they're from the New York state. So I think in retrospect, it's obvious why Dying Fetus chooses to tour with some of these deathcore bands because I actually do see a lot of the crossover appeal. I've noticed people who are into hardcore and deathcore, they tend to like Dying Fetus. Maybe not so much the Dying Fetus fans caring for deathcore, but, you know, I think this bill has a really good variety to it. Yeah, Chelsea Grin felt right in place between Bodysnatcher and Dying Fetus. And then Dying Fetus goes on, and, you know, it was obviously, it's exactly what you think it is. That's actually what I really liked about the Dying Fetus performance is, you know, Dying Fetus has been around for a while. They played a couple songs, I'm pretty sure, from, like, almost all of their releases, which I really like because I think, like, you know, they're a band with, you know, all sorts of different, like, styles and sounds, right? Like, when I go through their albums, I definitely have, like, my favorites. I have some, you know, highs and lows, but I really like that they were selective and picked a couple bangers from each album. And it's exactly that. Like, seeing the trio of Dying Fetus is also really cool, like how powerful that band sounds. And they're a three-piece, and I really like, you know, the dual vocal dynamic that they've had and live. It sounds exactly like that. There's no bullshit. And that's what I really liked about this bill altogether, was I felt just like all the bands were totally on point. The headliner was fitting with the opening bands, and the entire crowd seemed really engaged, which I was really, really happy to see. So let me tell you guys, if you had the opportunity, please check out this tour. It's great. You'll love it. I loved it. This is Marcus from Deep Dive Discography, signing out. C'est la vie.